We see things now like if you see white in the dream is God, if you see black in the dream. I don't know where we got that from, but the Bible does not teach us anything like that. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Iretayo. Thank you for stopping by, and I do appreciate you. Alright, let's get straight into the video. Today's conversation is something very relatable. Like, have you ever had that moment in your life where you were so sure you had God say something and then it turned out that you were wrong? Like, you heard God say you were going to marry Shegun, but Shegun is married to Tolu, and he eventually had to marry Leko. That kind of thing. Yes. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, how many times, when and where did you have this kind of experience, and how were you able to jolt yourself to the reality that, okay, I was wrong? Sometimes some people never admit that they were wrong. They want to blame God, that God was the one who was wrong. They don't want to admit that, oh, they were actually wrong and they didn't hear properly. So let's just talk about this. The thing is, in our walk with God, we are learning to walk. So a few times we can make some mistakes, and those mistakes are original to us. You are not the only one. Chill. Could be only you. I remember one time I thought I was going to get married to one guy. I was so sure until I became unsure, and I ended up not marrying the person. So in our walk with God, in learning to hear God's voice, there are times when we actually make mistakes. We can say that we are sure, but when we look at it again more objectively, we find out the places where we make mistakes. Sometimes because we are overwhelmed by our own desires, so we just, in that overwhelming state, it's like someone who you have been collecting gifts. He's buying you stuff, he's buying you a lot of things, and you are collecting it. I'm not saying that collecting gifts is wrong, except that you know his intentions and you have been absorbing it. You talk late into the night, but he has never really said anything. There's no how when he finally comes after 6 months of friendship with benefits, when he finally comes and you go to sleep, especially if you are relying on dreams as the way God speaks, and you go to sleep, you will dream of him. See, let me tell you how this thing works. If you solve maths too much during the day, you will dream of solving maths in your night. So if you have thought of Shegun all through the day, he was the last person that spoke to you yesterday night. The first voice you hear in the morning, the last voice you hear at night. Abba, come off it, Joe. Stop playing. You will dream of him now, and then you start pinning it on God. So sometimes the reasons why we make such mistakes is because we are overwhelmed by our own personal desires. At other times, it's because we misinterpreted what God was saying. Dreams are coded informations. They ought to be interpreted. Every dream should be interpreted as led by the Spirit of God. There is no fixed straitjacket interpretation for any dream. We see things now like if you see white in the dream is God, if you see black in the dream. I don't know where we got that from, but the Bible does not teach us anything like that. When we look at Joseph, for instance, in Genesis 37, and he had a dream where he and his brothers were gathering grains, and the grains of his brothers bow down to his own grains. And by the time the brothers were going to give him the interpretation, they even interpreted it. They interpreted it as they themselves bowing down to him in worship. And they got angry and sold him into slavery for that. Long story short, fast forward to when he was in slavery and he had to interpret, he was called upon to interpret the dream of Pharaoh. Pharaoh saw grains too, with this corn this time around. Also grains, slim ones swallowing fat ones. And Joseph did not say, oh, it means brothers. He simply said he's going to ask God. And when he came with the interpretation, what God told him was, this represents years of famine and years of plenty. So he didn't import the meaning of what he had as a dream when he was younger to what Pharaoh had as a dream. He didn't import the symbolism of grains into that interpretation. So the idea of unnecessarily attaching symbolisms to fixed meanings is not consistent with scriptures. Every dream is a puzzle on its own, and it should be solved by the help of Holy Spirit. So some of the times why we actually missed it in hearing God was because God was saying something, maybe through a dream, through inspiration or something. And by the time we interpreted, especially dreams, and by the time we interpreted the dream, we interpreted it wrongly because we had a fixed mode or a fixed bias of what something means. So God can be talking about, in fact, you can have two similar dreams or even the same dream two times, and when you pray about it, the Lord will give you a different interpretation for the same dream. So that's another reason why we often miss it and we say, oh, we heard God, and we find out later on that, oh, we missed it somewhere there. So this video is just to let you know that you're not the only one. It's not peculiar to you. It's a possibility as we are walking with God that we miss a few things here and there. But like I said, we shouldn't come to God with presumptuous ideologies or presumptuous things that we want to happen. And secondly, don't have a fixed view of interpreting dreams or interpreting what God's saying. Let the veil be taken away and allow God to speak to you without any bias. That way you're going to be sure that you're hearing God. And of course, a very third way to test if you're hearing God before you find out from your experience is to check if what you're hearing is consistent with scriptures. If it is not consistent with scriptures, trash it. It's not from God. If God is speaking to you, he won't break his word to communicate to you through dreams or through any other means. So ensure that what you're hearing is in tandem with scriptural principles. So have you ever had this kind of experience? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in my next video. Bye.